Oh, how do's and welcome back to the channel. Today is Friday the 30th of August 2024 and I'm recently back from a short holiday to South Africa to go and see my family. I've been back in the UK for about a week, and the reason why I managed to take a short break to go and see my family, I'm between contracts at work, so I've basically got unplanned leave. And until the new contract comes through, I've just got to sit tight and enjoy myself, really. Anyway, so previously what I've been doing is I've been uploading videos of particular passes in Switzerland and Italy. You know, I recently did that tour of Switzerland and Italy. That was the back end of June all the way to the beginning of July. It was a nice 2-week-long stretch. Myself and a few other mates, there were 8 of us in total. You know, we trekked over from England up in the north. I live in Macclesfield, my other mates, they live in Poynton areas. So we all got together at one of the service stations, and yeah, first couple of days over, it was a long first couple of days. I think it was almost 400 miles each of the first 2 days, just to try and get to our destination, our first destination, or main destination I should say, because we did have an overnight stop at Reims in France, but our main first destination was in Windscreen in Switzerland. And you know, previously I had posted a review of this Suzuki GSXS-1000GT. I've owned the bike now. This is my 3rd year of ownership, and the bike is due to go back in May of 2025. And I thought I'd just give an update after 2 years. But today's video is just building on that initial review that I gave. The bike has now got 8,816 miles, if you can see it down there on the clock. And I wanted to give an update following that tour that I had. We did 2,847 miles. I'll post in the video, one of my mates actually recorded the mileage, I just forgot. So you'll see his dashboard from his KTM, you'll have the mileage there. Approximately 2,847 miles that we did. And yeah, this is what I can tell you from that long trip. So the Suzuki GSXS-1000GT, it performed well. I won't say faultlessly, because I did have a couple of issues on this trip. Now, the couple of issues may not seem major. You know, they were relatively minor, but there are still issues that I should just explain. So, the first issue that I had was with my cruise control. Now, the cruise control on the Suzuki GSXS-1000GT is activated here on the right thumb. So as soon as I activate it, you can see the green indicator symbol there on the dashboard, which indicates that my cruise control is ready to be used. But what I found after one of the stops in France was that I tried to engage it, and it would flash like this the whole time. It just would not work. I tried, and it just wouldn't work until the very next fuel stop, where I pulled over, and I didn't even think about it. I was like, okay, right, I tried it, it's not working. Unfortunately, these things do happen. Refilled, stretched my legs, got back on the bike, and after that it worked fine, faultlessly for the rest of the trip. So that was one of the minor faults. And another fault that I had was to do with the panniers. So what I'll do is, as soon as I find an area just to pull over here, I'll explain about those panniers, the pannier issue that I had, and show you exactly what happened. Right, let's see if I can just squeeze in here by one of these trucks. You may recognize this road. This is the Cat and Fiddle, the A537. It's right here on my doorstep in Macclesfield. I live just south of Manchester. Right. Okay, so let me just explain here. So it was actually this pannier here that had the issue, And what it was is that even with last year's tour, when I stuck the key into the key barrel and I tried to move it between the lock and the unlock positions, it would go beyond the unlock, and it just felt very loose. And the very first night where we stopped overnight or for this recent tour, the very first night where we stopped in Reims in France, I put the key in to unlock it, and as I unlocked it, the whole barrel came out with the key. And what's underneath there is just a slot. So it was a fault. I think if it hadn't have broken as it did, it would have been a major fault, because then I wouldn't have been able to use the pannier. However, because the key barrel had come out and there was still a slot and I could operate the panniers, I was still able to use the pannier, but it was no longer secure. Secure in the sense that somebody could just come to my bike with a screwdriver or a long implement like a key or something and just unlock it with any key because of that slot. So what I ended up doing was putting all the non-valuables in the left-hand pannier, and all the valuables I'd keep on the right-hand side, all my camera equipment. So when I returned from the tour that we had, I managed to get the bike checked in at Power Slide Motorcycles down in Stoke. It's a fantastic dealership. They've always been able to fit me in at short notice. And I explained to them what had happened with the pannier, so I also needed to have the bike serviced. Now, I didn't have the bike serviced because I went on tour, because I knew we were going to do about 2,000 miles. So I thought, right, let me do the tour, and then I'll have the bike serviced afterwards. I should also just add that before I went on the tour, I did check everything, and the only thing the bike needed adjusting, from the service that had happened in the previous year, was I needed to adjust this chain. The chain is almost on the maximum adjustment, which is a first for me. The last few bikes I've owned, and I've done similar mileage, I've never got to the extremities of the chain adjustment so quickly. So that's within the second year that I've had to adjust the Suzuki GT's chain almost to the extremity. So that's the one thing that I did. The other thing was the oil was below halfway. So I thought, look, I'm not going to take a chance. I bought some engine oil and I filled it up, about 3/4 near the maximum. So I did that just before I went on the tour. But subsequently, when I came back from the tour, had the issue with the pannier. I knew the bike needed service. I called it Power Slide Motorcycles. They are fantastic dealership for servicing. They managed to fit me in within a week. It's really, really quick. When I'm up in the north and I'm trying to phone around like Wigan Motorcycles and Millennium, etc., places like that, generally those places can only fit your bike in, but they need like a month or two notice. It's crazy. So yeah, highly recommend Power Slide Motorcycles down in Stoke-on-Trent, and in the description I'll put a link to their details. I'll also just flash up on the screen their Google information, so you can see exactly where to get your bike serviced. Have a speak to them. They're a really pleasant lady that operates the reception, and really good mechanics there. Anyway, so what the mechanic did, because while I was on tour with that pannier, we took the whole thing apart. I always take excessive amounts of tools, etc., when I go on tour. You never know what's going to happen. We took the pannier apart, and we got to a point where we couldn't disassemble it any further without drilling out pop rivets. And I just thought, no, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to be taking apart rivets. So I just left the panniers like that. Like I said, it happened on the very first night that the key barrel came out with the key, so I no longer had a secure barrel. So when I took it down to Power Slide Motorcycles, I thought it was going to be a big job. I thought they'd have to disassemble the whole lot, knock out the rivets, and maybe it'd be half a day. So I went down there, dropped the bike off, I walked to a nearest little McDonald's, whatever, and I sat there waiting. Anyway, I thought, I'll take a walk back at lunchtime and see how they're doing, how they're getting on, just to see what time the bike would be ready. In my mind, I was thinking maybe late afternoon the bike would be ready, and they said, oh no, sir, here it is, the bike's fixed already. So I said, wow, that was quick. I said, how did you repair that key lock on the pannier? Oh, easy, the guy said. So what they did was, around the actual key barrel, there's a plastic retainer, and all they did was they just used a Dremel to remove some of the material of that plastic retaining. I don't know what it is. It's like a locking retainer, and they used the Dremel to break it out, and then as soon as they broke that out, then they could remove the whole mechanism and put it all back together. What had happened with it was, on the underside of the key barrel there's these two tiny little holes, and I'm talking, it must be like for an M4 or smaller bolt, and somebody had obviously forgotten to put Loctite in there, and that's why those retaining screws had dropped out the underside of the key barrel, and that's why that whole barrel came out. So yeah, all they've done now is that they broke off the retaining plastic holder, and yeah, just forced it out and put a new one in. So brilliant. Yeah, really highly recommended. Power Slide Motorcycles, they did a cracking job, and they did it in next to no time. Right, so that was the two minor faults that I had on the trip. So it didn't ruin the holiday or anything. It was just a bit of disappointing with the Pannier. So it wasn't really the fault of the bike, it was more fault with the accessories. Again, the cruise control, I've not been able to replicate that fault since, so I have no idea what happened there. Only thing I can think that may have happened is, I noticed the bike was heating up quite a lot on the journey, and it did let out a load of water at one point. So I wonder if there's a load of water got onto a sensor of sorts, and maybe there was a short circuit for a short while until, you know, I'd run it through the air for a while and it was able to dry off. That's the only thing I can think of. But other than those two minor issues, oh, the bike performed faultlessly. So let's then get on to the ergonomics. How did I find the seating position for those 2,800 odd miles? Well, this bike is comfortable. It's comfortable for me. I am 5'9". Although I've got exceptionally short legs and arms, so my legs, I've only got a 29-inch inseam, and my arms are relatively short too. If I could, the only thing I would change to the ergonomics of this bike is probably have the bars come back just an inch. I've noticed in all the footage, when I'm playing back footage of myself, I can see how straight my arms are. If you look at my elbows here, this is my normal riding position, and they're relatively straight. They should be bent somewhat, you know. But yeah, that's the only complaint I have about the ergonomics with regards to the handlebar position. For the seating is comfortable. I fitted one of those cool covers before we went on holiday, and I never had a problem with my backside, so the seat is comfortable. Now for the pegs in relation to the seat and the handlebars, they are a bit high, because remember, this is almost like a sports bike that's been detuned for sports touring. So the pegs are a little bit higher than what an adventure bike would offer you, and probably higher than a lot of other types of bikes. So I found that I could do comfortably, right, without even shifting about in the seat. I can easily do 60 miles, which is about an hour's worth of riding. I have to start shifting about in the seat when I get to around about 100 miles, and the farthest that I could ride before I definitely had to stop for a break and stretch my legs was 130 miles. So that did happen. Depending on who you ride with, you know, some of the lads that I was riding with, they had these large KTM adventure bikes which could do, I don't know, it must be well over 250 miles on a tank full. Yeah, all fine and dandy having a massive tank range like that, but there's no ways you can sit on a bike for 250 miles. So for me, as long as the tank has got a range of about 150 miles, I'm happy with that. But yeah, so without shifting around in my seat on a motorway, because that's the worst for me, is sitting on motorways and just, you know, hitting those miles, mile after mile after mile after mile. So yeah, 60 miles without even shifting my backside, 100 miles and I need to do a bit of shifting, maybe even just stretching my legs while I'm sitting on the bike, and maximum 130 miles where I have to actually get off the bike and just stretch my legs. But that's more a case of maybe it's my age. I'm 50 years old at the moment, so the flexibility isn't there in the hips and the knees as, you know, it used to be. You know, I've had years and years of riding sports bikes in the past where I didn't really feel so much pain in the legs, but now it's one of those things that I do notice. So that's the ergonomics of the bike covered. Anything else? Well, a lot of people have been asking me about the screen. So this is an MRA, it's a German brand MRA screen. It's the MRA Vario screen for the Suzuki GSX-S1000GT. I have fitted these MRA Vario screens to my bikes since the Africa Twin, yeah. So the Africa Twin, I used to have major issues with the wind buffeting, and I bought the MRA screen and it was a godsend. It was the best I could find, and I spent loads of money on different screens. So this is my screen of choice. As soon as I got this bike, I went and got one of these screens because I know I like to do tours, and you know, what better setup on your tour where you could just have a built-in spoiler here. You can flick it up, flick it down, and this windscreen, I don't know if you can tell, it's got a slight curve to it, so the airflow passes over a lot smoother than the standard screen. The standard screen is actually quite noisy, however I don't suffer with any wind buffeting on that, so that's a bonus. I know others have tried to put the accessory from the accessory catalogue. There's a taller touring screen from Suzuki's catalogue, but they say it suffers with wind buffeting. So yeah, that's what happens. I noticed that on the Africa Twin too, where I put larger screens on, there was a far more wind buffeting. The smaller I went, the better. So this is the best of both worlds. Curved screen, it's relatively small, and it's got the built-in spoiler. So that's an MRA Vario touring screen. It's a German brand. There are various shops online that can sell it. I think one of the retailers here in the UK, I managed to get hold of it there. I can't recall the cost. I know it's over £100, but to me, well worth it for what this screen actually achieves and helps you with regards to fatigue while you're riding. So yeah, top of my list. Brakes, man, the brakes on this bike, this is what lets it down. This is the 2022 version. The brakes still aren't right. I struggle with the brakes on this bike. I've heard that the 2024 version of this particular bike, the Suzuki GSXS-S1000GT, they've upgraded the brakes somehow. I don't know if it's a different pad compound or if it's the master cylinder, but I believe the brakes are far better. I struggle with these brakes. This is one of the first GTs that were here in the UK. Yeah, at the time of the bike show, I think it was February of 2022, I put my order in, and May 2022, that's when I picked the bike up. So yeah, I've had it for a couple of years, and this is the third year of ownership now. What else can I tell you? Well, the tyres, as soon as the standard OEM tyres were squared off at the back, I replaced these tyres. I put my favourite tyre on because I commute with bikes, not often, but I do at times, and I can be caught out riding in the rain if I go on a tour or whatever. I put on Michelin Pilot Road 6s, and can you believe it, somebody's trying to call me. Let me just see if there's a safe spot I can pull over and see who's calling. Just have to keep on going. Hopefully the voicemail kicks in. Hopefully. Oh, hopefully. Yeah, anyway, so I've replaced the tyres on this bike. I've put the Michelin Pilot Road 6s on. and everything's good in the world. So only thing that lets this bike down is that front brake. Other than that, this bike is superb. Now, the biggest bugbear, which some people comment on, and this is something I found particularly annoying on the tour, because we were doing such high motorway miles between our destinations. I was picking up a lot of vibrations in the handlebars. I said to people, oh, you know, round about when you get to about 5,000 RPM it starts to vibrate. It isn't so. What I noticed, and I tested this on the motorways while I was over on the continent in France, is if I adjusted, well, I kept my speed steady, and then I just changed down gears to see where the buzziness is the worst. So for me, the buzziness is relatively bad at about 6,000 RPM, but from 6,000 it gets worse to about 7,000, and then 7,500 RPM, that's when the buzzing stops. It's not that bad. So yeah, between 6 and 7,500 RPM on this bike, and that's 6,000 RPM. It coincides with the legal speeds here in the UK, traveling on the motorways at 70 miles per hour. Traveling in France, it's 130 kilometers per hour, which is about 75 miles per hour, maybe even 80 miles per hour, somewhere around there. And that's when I found that I was creeping over the 6,000 RPM. And anyway, so the buzzing was so bad that I was getting white finger syndrome. That's where the fingers buzz so much that you lose sensation in your fingertips. So that's what I suffered with. And coming home from that trip, because we did a couple of long days coming home, it was really bad. I think for about 4 weeks afterwards I didn't have the sensitivity in my fingertips on my left hand, because generally what I was doing was I was engaging the cruise control and taking my right hand off the bars, because I don't like to have a numb right hand, especially on the throttle side. That to me is far more dangerous than, you know, having a little bit of numbness in the left hand where it's just the clutch. And because you've got the clutch lever, you're not really operating because you've got the quick shifter, you're not really operating the clutch all the time. So what I was doing was I was just resting my left hand on cruise control. But yeah, I did find I suffered with that white finger syndrome because of the buzziness through the bars. Now, not everybody seems to have that buzziness through the bars. Some people have recommended I loosen off the engine bolts to the frame and then just retighten them. But I don't know. I think it might just be more a case of the internals, you know, because they have tolerances within these engines. Not every single piston is going to weigh the same as the other piston or the next piston, you know, so you are going to have some slight imbalances within the engine, you know, within specs or within tolerance. So yeah, I'm not going to go loosening engine bolts, etc. I just keep it as it is. And I've only got this bike until May next year of 2025, and then it's going back. I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford to purchase my bikes on PCP, where I pay £150 a month, and basically you're paying like a loan or hire cost really. You're hiring it for 3 years, and then after 3 years you can decide if you want to keep it or not, and then you have to pay a lump sum at the end of those 3 years. So I've already decided that I'm not going to be keeping this particular bike, however much I like it. It's just that one thing that I can't forgive this bike on, and that's the vibrations through the handlebars. That's one thing that, you know, I can't have. I've gone as far as even putting grip puppies on the handlebar grips just to try and alleviate that buzziness, but it still doesn't work. And also the angles of these bars, if you have a look at the grip puppies, you can see how the outside of my wrist seems to push down. I'm doing that on the bars the whole time because it's got a very strange angle. Now, it may seem like I'm just complaining for the sake of complaining. However, I've had one of my mates ride this bike, and the very first thing he said about this, oh, it's got a strange handlebar position, you know, with your hands. It's almost like you've got to tuck your elbows in, you know, to your chest, and then it sort of feels okay. But You can't ride a bike like that. Generally I tend to ride with my elbows out. I don't know if that's correct or not, but it's just what I find comfortable. So yeah, the handlebars do have a bit of a strange feel to me. Maybe straighter bars would have been better for me. And yeah, the buzziness on the handlebar, that's just one thing I cannot forgive. So I am on the lookout to try other bikes. I see there's another channel online. Somebody's gone and he's ended his deal with his GT, and he's subsequently gone and got himself another Suzuki GT. So I was thinking maybe I should do the same, because you know, as they develop these bikes, they do tiny little tweaks here and there to the bike. So maybe after 2 or 3 years in development of this bike, they would have sorted various things like the front brake, maybe the vibrations through the handlebars, and maybe any other little issues or niggles that come about. Oh, one other thing about Suzuki, while I'm just thinking about Suzuki as a manufacturer. Now I've had the displeasure of owning a Yamaha many years ago. It was my first big bike in the UK. I had a Yamaha FZ6N, the naked. It was horrendous. So I've never owned another Yamaha since. So I've owned Yamahas, I've owned Kawasaki's, I like Kawasaki's, I've owned Suzuki's, I like Suzuki's, and I've also owned Hondas. But what I've found in recent years, and this is ever since a Honda Fireblade that I owned in 2012, is that the Honda quality is no longer there. You know, people always talk about the Honda quality, but I was dismayed when I took off the top fairing of that Honda Fireblade. I couldn't believe how that the alloy parts underneath were corroded, and I never rode that bike in the winter. I'm a bit of a fair weather biker, really. I don't generally ride in the rain unless I'm caught out in the rain while I'm out and about somewhere, but generally if it's raining I don't go out. Yeah, so that was the Honda. And then when I got the Africa Twin, from day dot, from the start, the frame on that Honda Africa Twin was already rusting. I could see it as the bike was delivered to me. I could see the rust on the frame. And there were various other things I noted on that Africa Twin, you know, like condensation in the dashboard. And when you took apart the I don't know, it's a bash plate or something, and you could see the corrosion on the underside of the engine. It was phenomenal. Yeah, and I don't know if it's because some Hondas are now built in Thailand. I don't know if it's that, or if Honda themselves are just scrimping because they've built up this reputation of reliability and quality. I don't know now if they're resting on their laurels. But now what I found with Suzuki, for me, Suzuki, it's built to a price. And the reason why it's built to a price is because all the components that they use are tried and trusted. Now, the industry I work in, we favor components that are tried and trusted because we can't afford to have the latest sensor or whatever fail on our plants. So for me, I can understand that way of thinking with Suzuki, you know, tried and trusted. I'd rather have a component that's tried and trusted for 10 or 20 years over the latest all singing, all dancing electronic wizardry that could pack in after 6 months. So I understand this methodology of Suzuki's. Also, I believe that Suzuki's are assembled or put together in Japanese factories. So for me, that's a plus point. You know, regarding quality control, I don't think you can get better than Japanese. Japanese will always be number one for quality control. So yeah, that's what I like about the Suzuki, you know, compared now with other brands like Honda. Yes, I understand it's built to a price, but the quality is exceptionally good and it's very well screwed together. And because it's been assembled in Japan, I know that the quality control is going to be of the highest level available. So yeah, so that was my few comments that I have now from my recent tour while it's still fresh in my mind. Like I said, we went across the continent. We toured from England, north of England, all the way across through France. We went to Switzerland. It was our first major destination. We then did all the all the mountain passes in Switzerland. We then went over to Italy. We did some mountain passes in Italy, and then the return trip, the return leg, was a little bit quicker. You know, we passed through countries far quicker. I think we had one stopover. I can't even remember which country it was. Yeah, I think we came back through Germany and Belgium, etc. Came along that way. Yeah, so these are just my thoughts following my 2,800 and what was it, 47 mile tour of Europe. And hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any more questions, yeah, feel free to ask me questions about this bike. I'll try and help you as much as I can. You know, like I said, there were loads of questions about the screen. There's questions about how does it feel to sit on, etc. You know, with relation to handlebars, to the seat, etc. The seat height is relatively low on this bike, but it suits me. I've got exceptionally short legs, I've already mentioned, so I prefer a bike with a lower seat, so at least I can control it and paddle it around. Yeah, so please feel free to give me a shout, ask me the questions, and I'll help you as I go along. So yeah, until next time, take care and chat again soon. Cheers.